welcome to Reimagine version 14, our university edition. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, and if not, welcome back. Thanks for tuning back in. We've interviewed over 600 projects, teams, and thought leaders in the space, and the goal of our virtual conference is to educate and inform everybody, including those new to the crypto space, longtime holders, and industry professionals. So make sure to subscribe below to keep staying informed and enjoy what we have coming up for you today. And today we have a new guest to our program and to our conference series, Mr. Ben Edgington, product lead at ConsenSys. And the timing couldn't be more perfect here with what just happened with Ethereum, as ConsenSys is the organization responsible for the recent Ethereum merge. You can find him all over YouTube helping you make sense of the Ethereum network. Glad to have you out here today, Ben. How are you doing?
Pleasure. Thank you for the invitation to join you. I must correct you, though, on one thing. ConsenSys is part of the whole ecosystem delivering this upgrade, this merge on Ethereum. So the whole thing is decentralized. This is what makes it so incredible, is that it was dozens of organizations, over 100 individuals, all coordinating together all over the world. We played a small role in that at ConsenSys, but yeah, it was truly a massive community effort. But yeah, I just want to make that really clear.
Very interesting. Yeah, maybe we can get more into the brass tacks of that later on. But as I mentioned before, this is our university edition, and our focus in this edition was to invite student blockchain partners to come ask questions and discuss groundbreaking new technologies with some of the most influential thought and business leaders in the industry. In that vein, our company MouseBelt has been working with more than 80 student blockchain organizations from universities spanning multiple continents, providing support in a variety of ways, from internships, office hours, sponsorships, as well as early stage projects investment. So today we have joining us for a discussion, Mr. Jack McCarthy, representing Boston College. Happy for you to join us today. How are you doing, Jack? How is the weather up there in Boston?
It's still all right. I think we have another week or two before it starts to get freezing cold, and then we all crawl back into our houses and dorms for the rest of the semester. But it's been nice so far.
Just before we move on, can you just tell us a little bit about the club up there, maybe how many members, if you know about the distribution of the majors, and then maybe some activities or projects that y'all have either recently gotten into or have planned for the near future?
Definitely. So we have about 40 active members, I would say. Most of them come from our business school. That's where we see a majority of the interest at the moment. We're definitely trying to grow the interest among more of our computer science students, kind of bring them in so we can get more developers. What we do as a club is we kind of alternate depending on the week. So one week we'll have like a group internal meeting where we'll discuss recent news, market trends, kind of just an open discussion about all things blockchain. And then the following week, we'll invite a guest speaker in, who'll present on a topic, and we'll kind of have like that discussion and learn from them. So those are our bi-weekly meetings. Aside from that, we publish research reports on our website, bcblockchain.org. We run an investment fund that we just started this year. And we're starting up some Solidity labs for our students, like workshops this year. So we're super excited, definitely growing at light speed compared to last year. So it's been great.
Sounds like it's going to be, yeah, an exciting year up there in Boston. So we'll go ahead and jump right on into it. Why don't you go ahead and just start us right back off, Jack?
One thing that I kind of saw trending recently was Stanford researchers posting a paper discussing the potential for a new token type that would enable reversible transactions on Ethereum. Really curious about your opinions on this. I saw a lot of mixed reactions, especially kind of, there was the old phase of these, decentralization maxis. This goes against the immutability, finality of blockchains. And then there's another camp saying, well, if we want to onboard the next 1 billion users to Ethereum, we might need something like that. So I guess I'd love to see where you fall on that spectrum, and kind of give us your reasoning for why.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've seen the same work, and it's interesting. So fundamentally, it doesn't change the immutability of the blockchain, right? I mean, it's not. You can, upon the immutable ledger, you can build anything you like. Ethereum is a Turing complete platform, and that literally means you can build anything you like. So, it's no surprise that it's possible to build a token. So the idea is I can send you the token, and then if I want to, it will take a while to settle. And if during that period I wish to dispute the transaction, then that gets sent to a sort of panel of randomly selected judges around the world who will, consider the transaction. Was it legit or was it not legit, and reverse it. And the main goal is really, in the case of hacks, to give a period of time whereby that, stolen token can be returned to its rightful owner. And it applies to NFTs as well. Yeah, what do I think? I mean, I think there's a place for stuff like this. People will build it. So, one of the early premises of blockchain technology was be your own bank. So that makes you fully responsible for holding your keys, not your crypto. If you screw up, or if you're hacked and your assets are stolen, then it's all on you. You're your own bank. You've got no recourse to anybody else. But not everybody wants to be their own bank, right? Banks exist for a reason. They offer security, they offer convenience, they offer guarantees. I don't know what it's like in your country, but in my country, there's this huge fraud compensation scheme whereby if you're defrauded out of money, even if you sent the money but it was fraudulently obtained from you, the bank will refund you that money. And that's very comforting to a lot of people. They will trade off that control for the comfort of having that. And I think that's okay. I don't want to force my mum to be her own bank. I mean, so there's a place for this, but I would not do it at the fundamental ledger, at the protocol level. I don't think finality is vital, is critical there. But if people want to use reversible tokens and they understand what they're doing and they understand the risks and rewards and benefits of it, then this is fine by me. I will say it's very complex though, that protocol. So
why don't you, Mr. Edgington, why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit for people who might be a little bit newer to the space, how you entered the blockchain space around 2016, how that happened, and maybe for people who just know the name ConsenSys, like myself, maybe you can talk to your organization's participation in the merge and what it was.
Yeah, gladly. So I'm a little bit older than the average bear in blockchain. I've had my career has sort of progressed in decade timescales, and I'm 3.5 decades in, I guess, since leaving school. I spent the first decade in academia, eventually working on climate science and climate research. Left that to spend 20 years in industry, actually working for the same company, a huge Japanese multinational. The first decade there was as an engineer working on supercomputers and industrial scale routing technology and smart cards and biometrics and all sorts of things as a sort of hands-on engineer. And then the sort of second decade there was management track, I guess. And I ended up sort of somewhat senior in fintech. We were doing a lot of information security and fintech stuff. Ended up as a head of engineering for the European operation in fintech. And there came a point in 2016, as you say, when all our sort of salespeople and our pre-sales engineers are all coming back from meetings with clients and saying, they only want to talk about one thing. It's something called blockchain. Can you find out what it is? So I did. I looked into this. I read the Bitcoin white paper. Thought, yeah, interesting, but wasn't gripped. Then I stumbled across Ethereum and I thought, yeah, this is hot. This is amazing. And was immediately sort of sucked down into this rabbit hole of that, spending all evening and weekends, hacking around with smart contracts, trying to understand what was going on, reading Reddit and everything. I made some very small contributions to some Ethereum projects, and found people in the community were so welcoming. They were just so open, helpful, and didn't scorn my feeble attempts to contribute stuff, and just that won me over. I had the opportunity to join ConsenSys in October 2017, so 5 years ago now. And ConsenSys is blockchain software company, primarily Ethereum based, though not exclusively. And we build the tools that enable others to build on Ethereum. So things like Infura serves data for Ethereum applications to use. MetaMask is what users use to interact with the blockchain. It's a wallet. We have Truffle, which is a development platform for Ethereum smart contracts. And where I work is in the protocols, which is kind of one layer deeper. And we're building the software that actually runs the network. So my software is called Teku, and it's proof of stake client software, and it's running the proof of stake network as we speak. It secures something like $3 billion worth of stake placed by stakers globally. So yeah, and I've got a terrific team of engineers. I sort of product manage that, and there's brilliant team of engineers build it and maintain it. Yep, so that's where I am, and that's where ConsenSys is, more or less. Yeah,
that is fantastic, and it has been my experience as well, that even sometimes when I've been a little bit more hostile in some of these communities, I've been welcomed just like, it's like hug boxes sometimes. It's very, very everybody understands that, oh yeah, somebody's just upset, yeah, their thing doesn't work or whatever. It's very, very, everybody's got the same experience. So Jack, if you've got something else, along those lines, or just something else, I'll throw it back to you in Boston.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of dig deeper on the whole proof of work, proof of stake argument. I hope you're not sick of it by now after everything. So from what I've seen, people have been saying it's more secure because there's more value staking it. But I guess what I want to kind of touch on is not in a nominal sense, because in my opinion, now is proof of stake, a government can print money and go out and buy Ethereum, take over 51%, 33%, whatever. So I really want to dig into the feasibility of hacking them now. I know, Bitcoin and Ethereum, very hard to hack with how big they are now, gain a controlling stake. But outside of just a pure dollar amount, which consensus mechanism, proof of work or proof of stake, do you think is more feasible to hack? So like in real life, having to go out and buy all these machines for mining versus, printing money to buy the tokens, control proof of stake. So I'd love to dig in on that.
Yeah, and that's the right question. So the whole security argument, part of it, one leg of the security argument is what is the cost to attack the network. And by attack the network, we mean basically rewrite the history of the network. Nobody can change the protocol rules. You can't just print yourself a million Bitcoin because the network just won't accept that. But you can, for example, revert the history of the chain, so you can do a double spend attack, for example, on an exchange. And what is the cost of doing that? And under proof of work, it's the 51% attack. So you have to have more hash power than the honest actors in the network. And then you can basically do what you like. And the interesting thing about that is if you manage to acquire the equipment to do that attack, which is just money. I mean, it's and certain actors in the ecosystem have more ability to do that. So Bitmain, for example, making ASICs, who knows whether they're building their super powerful ASICs in secret, supplying them to, people we don't know who. It's easier for some actors than others to acquire that hash power. And the interesting thing about a 51% attack is it costs you money in electricity to mount it, but you get all that back because when you win, you get all the block rewards for all the blocks that you mined yourself. And if the premise has always been, if you do this, then the value of the token will crash, and then it costs you a lot. But experience has said, Ethereum Classic's been 51% attacked multiple times. Turns out nobody cares about exchanges being double spent. I mean, it's just not an issue for the price of the token. So it's been interesting to observe that. But fundamentally, there is a big barrier. Acquiring the equipment is the primary one under proof of work. Proof of stake, it's acquiring the coin, which on the face of it looks easier, but it actually to attack Ethereum now, you basically need, there are different sorts of attack under proof of stake, but you need between 50 and 66%, half and 2/3 of the Ethereum to mount an interesting attack against the network. So if you assume all the current actors are honest, there's about 14 million Ether staked. So you'd have to acquire about 14 million Ether, which is, I don't know, $16 billion worth. That is going to be not easy to do. It's going to be very obvious it's happening, right, through exchanges and price and all those mechanisms. It's, price is going to rocket if somebody says, right, I'm going to buy $16 billion worth of ETH. I mean, it's about 12% of all Ether in existence is staked, and you have to acquire another 12%. So to do anything interesting there. More subtle attacks, bribing existing stakers, for example, then your barrier is lower because you only have to sort of find half of the existing stakers who are somewhat dishonest and willing to be bribed. But even then, the costs are still enormous, and probably 3 to 4 times the cost of an equivalent attack against proof of work Ethereum, as it was. Acquiring the Ether is probably 3, 4, 5 times more expensive than acquiring the equipment to mount a proof of work attack. But so yeah, definitely not less secure, but different metrics, different sort of model. But I'm content that it's certainly not less secure under proof of stake.
And one of those is it true that one of the security mechanisms of moving to proof of stake, even though there are pros and cons in relation to proof of work, but one of the pros in terms of moving to proof of stake is you slow down that issuance, you slow down the velocity of the creation of ETH, so that that value doesn't, so it's less likely. Is that something that's true? Maybe you could speak to that a little bit. I'm sorry if I was unclear.
Yeah, that's not so much part of the security argument, but it is another benefit of proof of stake, is that we no longer have to pay for this huge power consumption. So miners are rewarded by issuance from the protocol. So this is new coin generated out of nothing to pay the people supporting the network. So under proof of work, there's a block reward. So Ethereum was 2 ETH every block, plus some maybe minor, we called them uncle rewards, but they're negligible. Now we are effectively under proof of stake issuing the equivalent of about 10% of that, about 0.2 ETH per block. And that's purely because we no longer have to pay for this massive power consumption and capital costs of miners. So that reduces overall issuance, which in principle increases the value of the underlying coin, which increases security of the whole system, because if the coin is more valuable, it's harder for an attacker to gain more of it. So people are happy about this. And we have this burning mechanism under Ethereum for about a year now. It's called EIP 1559. We're not very good at catchy names. And so every time people transact on Ethereum, a little bit of the transaction fee is burnt. And the last few days, actually more has been burnt than has been issued. So there is less Ether in circulation today than there was yesterday, less total supply. So that's an interesting byproduct of the merge, and one of the sort of 3 reasons was just so that we're not spending money on just this burning power thing. But I mentioned that this cost of attack was one of the legs of security. The other one is new with proof of stake. Proof of work doesn't have this. The other one is that we can identify attackers under proof of stake and do something about them, which is just not possible under proof of work, because miners are anonymous. You cannot know who they are in protocol, Whereas we do know who people are in protocol, in who they are pseudonymously. We know that there's a stake there, and we can potentially, if we detect an attack, we can take away that stake. Now that's automatic in protocol in Ethereum if it detects attacks on the network, so people behaving in ways that undermine the protocol, and we call it slashing. Some of their stake is automatically slashed, removed, and they're kicked out of the protocol. And if we, so that that remedy is just not available under proof of work. And we also have this concept of social slashing. If we, detect a bad actor on the network who, for example, is censoring transactions in a way that harms the network, we can, in principle, identify them by their stake. We know which validators and which stakes are responsible for this, and we can coordinate just to kick them out of the network, because this is effectively breaking the rules of the protocol. So, and again, under proof of work, there's no defense to that. It's a new security feature. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like this is producing or a step towards some of that security that you were talking about earlier, that some consumers are going to want. And especially a non-volatile environment is essential if you're looking to build anything. You can't be spending a whole bunch of gas or Jack, we'll go back to you in Boston.
I know MetaMask, one of your guys' products, whenever I do like an intro to blockchain event at the start of the year, we'll set them up on MetaMask, kind of have them mess around on chain. But you kind of mentioned it earlier, how you don't want your mom being her own bank, or maybe not your own mom, but there are grandparents out there that maybe aren't as tech savvy and maybe shouldn't be holding their seed phrase. But I also wouldn't want my grandparents to be holding their funds on an exchange where it's literally not their funds. So do you see any potential advancements in the wallet space that can make it more consumer friendly and less kind of scary about this pressure of holding your own keys without giving up that benefit of the assets truly being your own?
I think this is definitely something that needs improvement, will improve over years to come. We need more and more creative people and user-oriented people in the space. And I was around in the 1980s. I remember what using the internet in the 1980s was like, and it was extremely clunky and unpleasant, and was for techies only. I remember Mosaic, the first graphical browser I ever used, and pictures appeared on my screen, and it was astonishing. I'd just been using like text-based, terminal-based web browsers prior to that, and it was a game changer. And that was the forefather of all modern browsers that we have now. And I still feel like a lot of our blockchain tech is still somewhere in the mid 1980s in terms of usability, and there's a long way to go. It's still province of the nerds, really. It will happen. I mean, as this stuff becomes more systemically important, people will this key management thing will get solved. So things like having it built into your mobile phone, so on a secure element, so you just don't need to worry about it. Your phone just comes with this, and you just don't need to worry about it at all. You just transact. Success for me, what does success look like? What it looks like for me is you don't know you're interacting with blockchain stuff. I mean, it just fades into the background. It's critical infrastructure for the planet, but you're just using an app, like you would use any app on your phone or on in a web browser, whatever, on your PC desktop. You don't know, you don't care what the underlying technology is. It's just delivering you some benefit transparently, because we've built layers of abstraction on top of it. Today you're exposed to the kind of raw blockchain kind of nastiness and protocol and things, but in 5 years, 10 years time, it's going to be smooth. And we need these people to join the ecosystem to come and build this stuff, because we nerds are not going to cut it. So please come and help.
I definitely when people ask me, hey, how do I get involved, what should I be doing, and I tell them, man, do not go buy crypto, go find a community that you are interested in and go do a little project for them and earn some crypto like that. Because honestly, I think people get hung up on the investment aspect of it without realizing that there's a lot else going on here than just people throwing money around. And kind of in that vein, since we're talking about the merge and stuff, I know a lot has been said, or a lot has been the cons of proof of stake have been often extolled, right? A lot of people are upset, but let's talk about some of the cons of proof of work. What made you concerned about proof of work, just in general?
Yeah, we've covered two of the main benefits of proof of stake over proof of work, one of which is a sort of security model, and the other is this sort of issuance. We're just not paying so much for our security anymore. But the number one for me was just the environmental thing. The numbers were terrifying under proof of work. So Ethereum under proof of work, I mean, there's an estimate out there that it was 0.2% of the whole electricity consumption of the world was burnt only in Ethereum proof of work. Yeah, this is, depending on whose estimates you believe, this is equivalent to a small country, you know, like Chile, or yeah, it's not a small country, but maybe in terms of power consumption, or Belgium in European terms, or whatever. So effectively, at the merge, we turned off a country's use of electricity, an entire country. And you know, in this day and age, that is significant. I mean, that's really significant. Again, by some estimates, Ethereum proof of work mining was emitting nearly a megaton of CO2 per week. Now, it might not have been a megaton, it might have been, you know, 0.2 megatons or something, but this, you know, we're not going to worry about a small factor here. This is immense amount of carbon pumped out, and you know, I'm really proud to have actually been part of reducing it. It's probably, you know, the most significant thing I've done in my life is, you know, is offset all the flights I've ever taken, and you know, all the air I've ever breathed, and all the vehicles I've ever driven, and whatever. Just doing that, and thousands more people as well. So yeah, that for me has been massive. And not everyone is not the main thing for everybody, but I think a lot of us are delighted, and especially a lot of brands. You know, there's a lot of hate for crypto in different ways. I mean, you've touched on it. You know, the make money fast thing has been one narrative, which is just, yeah, is horrible, but also the sort of environmental hate. You know, that your NFTs boil the ocean and all this kind of thing. And you know, I'm really glad that, you know, I can look my kids in the eye and say, we're not boiling the ocean anymore. And, you know, and brands, you know, are now getting on board. Previously, they'd had a massive backlash if they'd announced they were getting into crypto in any way, shape, or form. But now we're seeing more interest. They can, you know, with a clear conscience, clear environmental conscience, come and talk about crypto projects, and that's really encouraging.
That's very, very interesting. I think I saw Starbucks the other day or something. It's just insane. So we'll go back one more time up to Boston and Jack, if you got another one.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on, you know, the impacts that crypto has on the real world, proof of work previously, maybe boiling the oceans. But on a more positive note, what's kind of your favorite real world application of blockchain that you've seen so far?
Real world. I don't spend much time in the real world.
the meat space, as they like to say.
The meat space. Yeah, it's interesting. So NFTs are really interesting, right? Because that's not my world. I'm not sort of into art and that kind of thing, but I've been fascinated about how that has intersected with my world, which is sort of deeply technical protocol stuff. And ownership of digital assets is a brand new thing. I mean, you don't have it without blockchain. You can try and enforce things by legal contracts and so forth, but it's very ineffective, deeply ineffective. Actually asserting ownership of digital assets is brand new. And it's been really interesting to see that space being explored. And it's not just about artworks. It's like, you know, ENS, the Ethereum name system, which is a an adjunct to DNS. It's a blockchain-based DNS. Is NFT based. I mean, they are classic standard ERC 721s, I believe, which are NFTs. And enabling that kind of application, I think, has, is not yet impinging hugely on the real world, but is, I think, something which has tremendous utility, in years to come, land registry records and all of that, qualifications on the blockchain, things like that will be very interesting years to come. So that's one. And I think DeFi has huge potential. There are primitives being built in DeFi as a sort of a parallel economic system, several $1 trillion worth of potential value. I mean, we got up to about 4 trillion at one point in the whole ecosystem. Enough that governments are getting concerned about this stuff, and they want to regulate it. As an alternative to traditional banking, the primitives that allow trustless interaction on DeFi and creative new protocols, I think, are very interesting. And it's been a bit of a playground so far, and there are too many hacks and there are too many Ponzi's and blah blah. But if you look fundamentally, the basics, the quality projects, these are things that are going to be around for years to decades, and I think will actually show real utility in the real world at some point.
And so, just following up, where do you see the blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain? What do you think the next? I guess, like you said, we don't have catchy names for these things. The next DRP, what the next step is for the blockchain?
Yeah, the next step. So we don't really have a formal roadmap, in the sense we don't map out 2, 3, 4, 5 years of absolute deliveries. We will deliver this. We have a collection of stuff that we're working on and we'll deliver when it's ready. And a lot of that stuff is around scalability, making stuff faster. It's about usability, so changes in the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine, to make smart contracts more effective, easier to write, more secure, and things which make Ethereum nodes easier to run. So decentralization things that includes censorship resistance things, and just lightening the load on a somebody running an Ethereum node. So a whole bunch of stuff in these categories. Immediately, we want to look at putting withdrawals of stake from the blockchain. So in order to get the merge done as early as possible, we simplified it and took out as much as we possibly could from the event of the merge, just as a risk management exercise. That meant excluding some stuff we'd have liked to have had, but would have made it more complex, like withdrawals. So that means people who have been staking on the Beacon chain for the last 2 years, they've put in their 32 ETH and they've not been able to get it out, or any of the rewards out. It's just locked in the protocol till we have these withdrawals enabled. So I think it's somewhat high priority we do that, so people can take their money off exchanges that are staking, put it into more decentralized protocols and so on. That will be soon. We haven't set a date for that yet. There's a process amongst the core devs for deciding and what goes into the next upgrade. After that is a scalability thing. It does have a kind of catchy name. We call it proto-dank sharding, more formally EIP 4844. This adds a kind of block size increase, but the extra data in a block is only kept around for a month or so. So it's there, but we can discard it after a month so that our chain doesn't grow dramatically. And that data is useful for roll-ups, which are layer 2 solutions built to scale the underlying blockchain. They rely on the security of the base layer, but they don't have to have such decentralized assumptions, and thus they can be much more efficient. EIP 4844 enables them to run much faster, so we can get maybe 100 times more transaction throughput through the whole kind of Ethereum system as a whole. So those are the next 3 things on the radar, and then the roadmap. Well, I call it a roadmap. We've got enough to keep us busy for 10 years or so, I think. Beyond that,
what would you say to people who are concerned about the next step in terms of that unlocking and the centralization in terms of the latent centralization right now in terms of proof of stake. How are we going to get away from that? Then I'll shoot back to Jack one more time.
Yeah, centralization is something we're always fighting against. I mean, it's in the DNA to be decentralized, and we can build a protocol that has the capability of being decentralized, and I think Ethereum under proof of stake has that. But people can still choose to put all their funds on an exchange and subvert that, which is painful and horrifies me. I think we're in a better place. So we haven't made things worse by moving to proof of stake. Under proof of work, we had 4 or 5 mining pools control more than half of the hash power. And that's inevitable because the economies of scale under proof of work are huge. It's near impossible to run a full miner at home or on a small scale, because the big miners have huge advantage in terms of ability to negotiate power cost, ability to accumulate hardware at cheap prices, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was unfeasible to be a solo miner on proof of work. Under proof of stake, I'm a solo staker. I'm running a rig here at home on the very same connection that we're using to speak today, and that possibility is now open again. So in principle, we can be much more decentralized, much more effectively. In practice, there are some large entities like Coinbase Exchange who control large quantities of staked ether. Over time, I hope we will become more decentralized, but that's up to the community, the people who stake, to make that decision, and stop staking on exchanges and take things into their own hands. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Only way to stop it is to do something different. So
yeah, and we have now. I mean, when the Beacon chain started, we had no decentralized staking pools. Now we have, so Rocket Pool, for example, is a decentralized staking pool. They only really got up and running about a year ago, a year after the chain got running. So people are still locked into their initial positions, but once we have, we can unlock our stakes. We can, I'm hopeful that people will be able to put that into protocols like Rocket Pool, which are clearly more decentralized.
Definitely. Okay, let's go back with Jack in Boston.
Yeah, just curious, when you help with the Ethereum network as a dev, how much of it is simply like technical work and how much of it is more deep thinking, like theoretical work?
Yeah, there's a whole range of stuff. So there's fundamental research stuff, and all the way through to kind of writing code, and then there's deploying code and all of that. So the way it kind of works is most of the research people are employed by the Ethereum Foundation or somehow funded by the Ethereum Foundation, with a few exceptions. I mean, within ConsenSys, we have an R&D group. It's about 25 people. They're not all working on fundamental Ethereum protocols. They're working on cryptography and other things. But yeah, that's a team, and a bunch of them are working on core protocol things. And so the research people are thinking a couple of years ahead, working on zero knowledge protocols and that kind of thing and whatever, and inform a lot of the development and direction of the development. But they're not fundamentally writing production code. They might write some example code or some testbed stuff, but it's not, nobody's going to deploy it into production. So this is where teams like mine come in, and we take that. We work with the spec writers, so that research gets codified into a specification, which is all done open source on GitHub. Anyone can read it, can contribute and put up PRs and so forth. And that's codified into a spec. Then client teams write software, production quality software that meets that spec, and there's a whole iterative process, right? There's a feedback loop. We're always suggesting improvements, correcting things, suggesting better ways to do things, and closing the loop with the researchers about how it works in production. And then we build it, and then we hand it out to users, stakers, and node runners and everything is out of our control, then they run it and, you know, support the whole network. So we are not running the network. We're running a tiny fraction of the nodes on the network. The network is run by thousands and thousands of node operators around the world. So that in short is the process, and it is messy. Some would say inefficient. You know, it would be more efficient if we, you know, had a lab, we had one organization, we had a kind of head of research who told everybody what to do, and, you know, we had a program director who just planned out the next 3 years and said, okay, you do that, you do that, you do that. That's not how it works. There is no such role. It's very organic, very bottom up, very dynamic, and requires a lot of coordination, a lot of conversations. It's slow, but I think the outcomes are fantastic, for a couple of reasons. One of which is that you tend to get a lot of eyes on stuff, bring, you know, a lot of experience feeding back into things. And also because it just attracts, it's very attractive. People can come in and make a contribution. And yeah, we seem to have just this ability to attract really smart, committed, motivated people, and they just show up and make, you know, brilliant contributions. And it's always astonished me about, you know, Ethereum core development is that something needs doing, somebody shows up and does it. And there are so many opportunities to contribute and areas to get involved that it kind of works. It served us well.
So delivering projects and processes to the Ethereum network is what y'all are doing over there.
Yeah. The whole range of roles, from, you know, pure research right through to kind of software delivery, and everything in between.
So I guess there's a bunch of different ways that if kids, sorry, not kids, but students, college students, individuals, young adults, you know, excitable, you know, maybe, you know, you can teach an old dog new tricks. You know, I got back into it, and I'm not going anywhere. How can they come out and get involved with y'all at ConsenSys? Yeah,
so we have at ConsenSys specifically, we do have an intern program. So that runs every summer, Northern Hemisphere summer, and we had a terrific cohort this year, I should say, who have recently finished, and will be, you know, recruiting a new cohort next year. So, you know, look out for the ConsenSys careers page. So you can go to consensys.net and look at the careers page there, and there will be announcements about internships coming kind of early next year, I guess, on that. So that's an opportunity to work alongside, you know, people doing the job and learn the ropes and make a contribution. What kind of profile do we look for? You know, we're not that choosy. I mean, I think number one is just an incredible sense of curiosity. The desire to, and the hunger to learn stuff, and to make a contribution, make a difference. We're building really an ecosystem from the ground up. You know, this has not been done before. We're not sort of running along well-oiled tracks here. We're kind of literally making this stuff up as we go along. So people who are curious, willing to learn, flexible, and just have that desire just to absorb the knowledge and feedback on that is great. A lot of non-technical roles, really important, you know, communications, project management, design, stuff we've touched on to sort of be the link between the techies and the real world, you know, bringing these applications into life, and, you know, making them usable. Just a whole slew of non-technical roles are important. And, you know, as the Web3 ecosystem grows and becomes more normalized, those will become more and more significant as time goes on. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to check it out. Don't worry if you don't feel you check all the boxes. You know, everybody is looked at as an individual.
Definitely. In my experience, it's not necessarily about what you look like on paper. It's about, like you said, showing up. So if we've got any burning desires, Jack up at Boston College, if you've got anything. Otherwise,
yeah. Sorry, I will add just to that. I mean, outside ConsenSys, the classic way into, you've already referenced this, but outside, the classic way into Web3 Ethereum kind of projects is just get involved. Your GitHub history is your resume these days, right? And it's kind of different from when I was a student, but it's now, what I did, how I got involved in the Ethereum space was just find a project, start making some contributions, testing. Nobody likes writing test cases. I wrote test cases for the Solidity compiler, and that was I made some lame PRs, and that was my in. After that, I was kind of a member of the community, and one thing leads to another very easily. But never undervalue the getting involved, make a contribution, join the discords, show value, and people will come and knock on your door and make you offers.
I mean, this is a bit of a tricky question, but is there one quality or idea from a blockchain other than Ethereum that you think is super special and would love to see on Ethereum one day? And if the whole crossover wouldn't work because of different consensus systems and different designs, what is one idealistic thing that you would love to see on Ethereum?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ethereum has been superb at borrowing ideas from other chains over the years. So it's been we don't have any sort of not invented here syndrome. So we'll shamelessly pinch ideas from elsewhere. One thing I would love to see is we call it single slot finality. So a little bit kind of technical, but the idea is with proof of stake, something we didn't discuss it, we have this concept of finality. So there's a point at which it becomes impossibly expensive to revert the blockchain, and it takes us about 15 minutes to achieve finality under the current proof of stake. Proof of work doesn't have this property. You can have arbitrarily long 51% attacks. So but we have this 15 minutes interval between the last finalized block and where we are at the head of the chain, and that's forking, right? So you can get minor reversions, and we have this fork choice rule, and it's proved to be tricky. There are a number of issues that have been found with it. We're always, every few months we have to patch it up, and it's hard to do perfectly. And it doesn't really threaten, it's not existential, it doesn't really threaten the future of the chain, but it's a nuisance, and it's, we want to be sure it's secure. And waiting 15 minutes for finality is a bit of a usability issue. So I would love to see single slot finality. So we finalize the transaction. I can send you Ether or a token or anything, and within say 10 or 15 seconds, we know that is final. It will never be reverted. That is absolutely done and dusted. Chains like Cosmos have this. So they sacrifice finality for liveness. So if too many Cosmos nodes go offline, the protocol stops. You can't make any transactions. But you are guaranteed that once your transaction is on the chain, it is final. It will never be reverted. Ethereum has made a compromise on this. We have liveness. Even if we don't get finality, we still keep adding transactions to the chain. But our compromise favors liveness over finality, maybe a bit too much. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to steal some of that, finality, and make it faster on Ethereum, whilst trying not to sacrifice liveness too much. So a little bit technical, but I think that would be a great security and usability benefit for the chain.
And if they could throw in something, maybe they could steal something from Cardano about the way that they name their updates, just to help me out personally. That'd be great.
Yeah,
so,
that's a thought.
Yeah, yes, sir. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And I want to say thank you to Mr. Ben Edgington for coming on out and joining our virtual conference series today. He is a product lead building an ETH 2.0 product over at ConsenSys, an organization who was influential in delivery of the merge as well. Thank you, Jack, up at Boston College as well. Thank you all both, gentlemen.
Thank you both. It's been a pleasure. Great to meet you.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I love to nerd out. Thank you.